Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are usually two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But today we're
Three best
friends,
friends.
and it's not even Wednesday, which means it's a TV
It's a TV
Tuesday
Tuesday.
with Namina Forna. Welcome back to the pod.
Hi guys, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, we are
So excited. Friends, we had Namina on earlier this year. Namina is the author of The Gilded Ones, The Merciless Ones, and the recently released The Eternal Ones.
I just finished it just last week and it was amazing. But when we had Namina on, we asked her if she would come back and talk about Blue-Eyed Samurai. We didn't even give her the option to wait for a follow-up email, and she said she was down. So thank you
So we're
for
talking
coming
about
on.
all Blue-Eyed Samurai today.
Yes, so I watched it all today in preparation for this. Like this was my excuse. So thank you very much. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's homework. It's for work.
I know it's very much work.
Could you tell us a little bit about your history with Blue-Eye Samurai? I know it hasn't been out like too long, but when did you first watch it and like what brought you to it?
Well, I know it's like winter earlier this year. And like I am an anime buff. If there's like a new anime, especially if it's violent, I'm gonna watch it. And so like I'd sort of kept it like on my to watch for like a long time. And one day I like sat down, I was like, all right, let me watch one episode. You know, like when you sit down and you're like one episode,
Mm.
I looked up 8 hours later, and I had watched all the episodes because
Oh yeah.
I could not help myself. Like I was so fascinated with it. Like I love this show so much. Wait, can I go into like a little bit of why I love it, or is it?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
do it. Go for it.
So I love this show so much because like the protagonist is so compelling, their
Mhm.
mission is so compelling, and all the other characters, even the ones that I deeply dislike, um, like it's such a it's such an immersive but also realistic work. It's like realistic while being non-real. It's amazing. I
Yeah.
love this show so
Mm.
much. And also like I don't know, like she reminds me a little bit of Xena.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
I get those
Xena.
vibes.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Yeah.
Mizu is so compelling. I adore her so much. I like we'll get into it, but I really appreciated just her overall journey in the season. Laura, can you tell
Especially with the gender ambiguity,
oh,
like she's
Yes.
yeah.
oh my gosh. Laura, can you tell everyone your history with the show?
So kind of similar to Namina, I guess, where I watched it, I think in January of this year and was just like, oh, this was recommended to me. I might as well try it. And I loved it and binged the whole thing and couldn't stop talking about it and was seeking out people to talk about this show. And now I'm here with you guys because I needed people to talk about this show with.
Yeah. And my journey was Namina and Laura were pretty much nerding out about the show. Well, Namina was on the podcast. I was like, yeah, I'll definitely watch that. I'm not as a lot of my anime, or I'm not as much into like anime. I haven't watched that much of it. A lot of my like cartoon viewing goes towards the deeper, darker BoJack Horseman of it all. But
Mhm.
I greatly enjoyed this and I'm trying to experience more of this. So I watched it in a weekend with my partner. I forced him to watch the first two episodes so he could catch up with me and we could watch it together because I was enjoying it so much. So but for people who haven't watched the show, we're gonna spoil the heck out of this show. So
Yeah.
you should
Spoilers abound.
Heard about
So,
that. I was like, are we gonna spoil because there's
oh,
too much.
oh, tons of
there's too
spoilers.
much.
So
Tons of
tap
spoilers.
out if you haven't watched
Go
Blue Eye Samurai.
watch the show. But Blue Eye
Available on
Samurai
Netflix.
Because I mean, we
follow
already spoiled the fact that she's female.
and that's like, well, I
Eh,
will
they do that in the like intro thing though on Netflix, I will say.
Yeah. But like, when you like watch it, you're like, wait a second, and then you're like, oh, okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think I mean somewhere in the back of my mind I feel like someone had already told me that she was female, but like during the first part of it I was like, well, she is obviously a woman because like but I do like how they dressed her and I love the little
Mhm.
scarf she uses to like hide the fact that she doesn't have an Adam's apple. Like the little details
Mhm.
are perfection. Um But yeah, it follows this half white, half Japanese woman during Japan's Edo period. Her name is Mizu, and she has a quest for vengeance against four white men, because only four white men were in the country around the time of her birth, meaning one of them would be her father. And trigger warnings. It is very obvious that she is probably the product of rape. And so she wants vengeance against these people who have done this to her. This is during a period in time where Japan had closed its borders, so no white person should be there. But she has a feeling that they are there, and she's going to root them out. And because of this closing of the borders, Mizu deals with a lot of racism towards her background for things that aren't really her fault. So that is the background. It is created by a husband and wife team. The wife has not, as I didn't see too much of her pedigree. Yeah.
Amber Nuzumi, I think is how you say it, and Michael Green are the creators. They're, like you said, Hannah, husband and wife, and Amber is part Asian, part white, if she's biracial. But I believe Michael Green is just a white man.
Yeah, he's a white man.
Very much a white man.
And he kind of seemed to have brought like the writing creds, quote unquote. Like I didn't see as much about her writing background, but I was like, oh, it seems like she brought a lot of the cultural aspects and things.
Yes.
He wrote for a lot of shows though before this. He wrote for Smallville Heroes, which explains the Ringo character being voiced by Masaoka. And then he also wrote Logan, and he was the executive producer and writer for American Gods. So yeah, those are a little.
Y'all did a background. Like I just watched the show and I was like, that's it.
Well, and just a brief note too, that we don't know a lot about their history, but we're just going off of some tweets, that it's worth noting that the creators may be Zionists based on things that they have been retweeting and liking. So that is worth noting, listeners. Do not approve of that, but it may be there. And that is also interesting considering the
themes
work that they created. So yeah.
This is such a good show. There's a lot in it about like colonialism and racism and even like ethnocentrism that I thought was like they handled deftly. So it's very interesting to kind of see that and make sure that we are flagging what Laura said. But
yeah,
which one is it? Like the husband or the wife that's doing this?
It's the husband, but the wife has liked things apparently. So
Here.
And I haven't personally done a deep dive into them. I just have seen some other people talking about them being problematic, and I felt a little icky about that, so wanted to bring it up just to let everyone know.
But that being said, I do really enjoy the show. I really love the character of Mizu. The characters in the show are just so amazing.
Yes. Well, and they got really like a ton of actors for this cast. Like so many of the people are just very famous. Like George Takei is in this. Let me think, who else is
Brenda Song.
Brenda Song. The Never Have I Ever guy. Darren Barnett. Yeah, he's in this. So there's a ton of famous.
What about like the actor for Heiji Shinzo? What's his name? Randall
Park.
Randall Park.
Yes. Oh my God. And he acted so on this show.
Oh yeah, go for it.
He acted the shit out of that role. Like,
oh my God.
Yes.
Like he was so reprehensible. Like I literally was like, I was like, if I ever see this man in the street on site, oh my God. Like, whew.
What I love about the show is like a lot of the characters I can always tell who their voices are, and there are moments where I'm like, oh, that is definitely Randall Park speaking, but also wow, is he acting, and wow, is this amazing. And like Brenda Song, there were certain parts at the beginning where I felt like I was like, oh no, I can only hear Brenda Song, but by the end of it I'm like, nope, Akemi is amazing, and I'm very impressed with her work on this.
I also think that it was the person that played Abijah Fowler was Sir Kenneth Branagh, who he's in like those Agatha Christie movies and stuff, and I was kind of like shocked that was him. I was like, oh, I thought he had a different accent.
One of the best and worst, and like worse in a really good way, like just villains I have ever come across.
Yes.
He-
Oh my God. All right. So I really want to talk about the themes. Can we
Okay,
talk
Yes.
yes.
themes?
Yes.
Okay, because like I noticed there were like two big themes that
Mhm.
were playing all across this show, and I just like sort of want to gush about like how they
Yeah.
tied it together. And the two big themes where one was what does it mean to be a woman, right? Like
Yes.
and
Mhm.
like, what does it mean to be a woman, especially in this world, especially
Mhm.
in this time? Because you saw it consistently, like how, like, what were the expectations of
Mhm.
womanhood? Like, you saw it with Mizu, who sort of bypassed them by basically pretending to be a man. Like, most
Yeah.
people did not realize that she was female. Like, I
Mhm.
feel like only Ringo and Taigen maybe knew.
Mhm.
But like, I think like everybody else just thought she was a man.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course, Brenda Song's character, Akemi, who is like a princess who is rebelling, like she doesn't want to be married. And her father is like trying to um, sort of sell her off to like
Yeah.
the most influential lord, and she's rebelling against that, and so she like runs away and like does all of this like to rebel against the fate that has been written for her
Yeah.
as a woman. So like that was like the one like big theme, like what does it mean to be a woman and how do you play in the constraints of your womanhood in this time. And then the second one was greatness, right? Because like
Yes.
what does it mean to be great?
Mhm.
Because Mizu was definitely like basically the greatest swordsman
Yeah.
Mhm.
like in Japan. Like no doubt of like even immediately as you sort of like meet her, you like see that like the spark of
Mhm.
greatness. And then there's her there is her, what is it? Not assistant. What is he? Her
I guess
apprentice.
he's
Her
her
apprentice.
apprentice.
Yeah.
Her,
Yeah.
yeah, her
Ringo.
apprentice
Ringo.
Ringo, um, who like wants to be great. He wants
Mhm.
to be a samurai, even though like he has no hands.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was born congenitally, like he was born with like no like hands. So like
Mhm.
he has like
Yeah.
sort
A
of
limb difference. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so he wants to be a samurai, and he's like, well, and he says this to her, this is what he says to her. He's like, well, and he uses the word deformed too. He says this,
Mhm.
but like you are great. And if I can learn from you, I can be great.
Mhm.
And so
Because I
like
think he has a moment where he says, like, my entire life has been a battle. And I
yeah,
thought that was so moving.
Mhm.
yes, and that's the moment where she's like, she accepts him.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
I just thought that was like so amazing. But also like a complete aside is that I love Ringo so much.
Oh
Like
my gosh. He's my
like
Yes.
favorite.
he's
He's
been
so
through
sweet.
so much. Like because like background, Ringo essentially he works in a place that sells noodles and he
Mhm.
makes noodles
Hmm.
and like his father is very abusive and abuses him because of his differences, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so like when he sees Akemi in action, I mean, sorry, Mizu in action, he's
Mhm.
like, that's what I want to be. So he like immediately follows her. He like runs off like and follows her. And she does not want him to follow her. And it's so interesting because he is like so silent, right? And
Hmm.
Mhm.
she's like, how are you so quiet? And he's like, well, my father used to like beat me
Yeah.
every time I made noise. And I was like, no, no,
I
His backstory is so crushing, but at the same time, it's like this whole like aura around Ringo is just like so hopeful and so
yes.
positive because the way that he treats other people, he's so caring and like just compassionate towards other people regardless of their backgrounds and everything. And
While
it's just
also not
really
being an
phenomenal.
idiot.
Yeah, he's not
Yes.
an idiot at all. And I loved how in depth they kind of go into Ringo because in a lot of other shows, he would have just been like the buffooning sidekick. But
Hmm.
here, and
Yep.
like he's almost dressed up to be a buffoon. Like he is a bigger man, he has no
Hmm.
hands, he like is a little bit of like hopeful and kind of naive. But also, he can move quietly, and also he
Yeah.
becomes very versatile in a lot of his skills. And
And
like,
super fast learner too. Like
yeah,
this is someone who's been forcibly kept down by his
Mhm.
father and abused, and he's picking up on things so quickly and just like so resilient. It's amazing.
And also
I
he cannot be tricked. Like that's like the thing that I found amazing about him. I was like, there's like a certain situation where he's in and you're just like, not Ringo, like, oh my gosh. But like Ringo is just like, I already know what this is about, but he like never lets on.
Mhm.
and rises. And I was just like, thank God, like, because he is like one of my favorite, if not my favorite character. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He was
Every
definitely my favorite, but there was even a moment where he finally goes into the big city, and it's like a very
Mhm.
small, like small person, small pond going into the big city, and he eats soba noodles from another stand, and the guy is like, I don't even make the best ones in the city, and he's like, mine don't hold a candle to yours, and you're
like
the
I
not
thought
the
I was the
best.
greatest noodle maker ever.
But
Which
like
is
he
so
has
cute because he had previously said like to Mizu like I've already achieved greatness as the greatest noodle maker ever, so I'm pretty much destined for greatness in another aspect of my life too.
But like you can't keep him down because the next moment he's like, okay, well then I just have to learn. I have to keep
Yep.
trying. I have to study with people. And people like understand that he's very like tenacious in so many ways where
Hmm.
he's like quick to be heralded in under people's wings where like the soba guy was like, well, do you want to work for me and learn how to make
Just had
soba?
like that atmosphere and that air about him.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so great to watch him because then he like helps the sword master who is also
Hmm.
blind, but he is like a
Yes.
great sword master. And so uh, throughout all of it, like Ringo and Mizu have these people coming to them who have disabilities or have like some things that hold them back, or other people see them as holding them back, but it never does. They become the greatest.
Hmm.
And I do think that that is the theme, that anyone can be great as long as you want it and you're willing to work with what you can use. And I think that that's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's like really interesting that they included two disabled characters in
Mhm.
this. I don't know for sure like if we're getting too into like the history of it because they obviously would not be treated this well if this was a truthful tale. Like disabled characters would not be likely treated with this much respect as they are in the show. But I do really appreciate the way that disabled characters were included and that they are such positive and strong characters too. Like we don't consider them incapable. We
Mhm.
don't ever like they're never villainized or made to be like something that's fear we should be fearful of. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I actually found the depictions to be quite accurate. Because like if
Okay.
you think about Ringo, like so Ringo is abused by his father
Mhm.
because of his differences, right? And like everyone around him like says awful things to him. But I think like when we watch it, it sort of slides off like the abuse that he is experiencing because of how he is, right? Because
Mhm.
like
Hmm.
it's almost like his cheerfulness is like it's like Teflon,
Mhm.
right? So like any time that he comes onto the screen, even when awful things are happening, we're heartened because it's him.
Yeah.
And then with
Hmm.
like the sword master, like so apparently like his eyes are because of a fire. And I think like along like he's already acquired that reputation
Mhm.
as being like the
Hmm.
best of the best. So like it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you want a sword from the best of the best, you better like act right, you know?
No,
Yeah.
Like
well, I wonder, Laura, did you mean like it wasn't historically accurate? Because I
Yeah, I
do
meant
know.
historically
Oh,
accurate.
yeah, I think there's very accurate depictions, but I know.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I think that they're accurate depictions. I think I was thinking more like in if we were trying to be historically accurate, I was thinking that likely like a person with a disability was not going to be treated kindly.
but
But I could
I
be wrong. I don't know.
oh no, yeah, yeah.
Uh, no, I think that the depictions are so good. And also with
Yeah.
greatness comes like what it means to be great, like you were talking about, Namina, because a lot of people talk about like, is it great to be like you have Tigan, who is very much like things have to be done in a certain way, or else you're not being like chivalrous, or you're not being I forget the word he often uses, but he's like, no, you have to do it a certain way, or else you're just cheating, or you're not respecting the heritage. And then you have Mizu, who's like, I don't care about heritage. Like, no one has treated me right my entire life, so
Yeah.
I have to make the world I want to see. And then Ringo is someone who's like, well, you can work around the edges of things if you're working towards greatness, but you can't harm people who don't deserve it. Because at one point, when Ringo finally like walks away from Mizu, it's because she's betrayed Akemi, and he doesn't think that what she did was right or just. And he's like, I can't be with you then, because like you've betrayed what I see as greatness.
It's
And it's
also interesting too from that standpoint, Hannah, that like Ringo and the Swordmaster are kind of considered like the moral compass
Mhm.
of the story.
Yeah. And I think that that's like it adds to the greatness of how do you
Mhm.
be great and what do you have to like sell inside yourself to become great? Because Mizu thinks greatness comes from like accomplishing her goals. And we kind of see her moving away from that. And then she takes a step back at the end of the episode where she's like, no, I really need to find out where I came from and find my
Mhm.
identity. And it's interesting.
Yeah, I think identity is really a major theme within
Yeah.
the story too. But could we get back to like what you were talking about a little bit, Namino, with what it means to be a woman? Because
Mm.
the depictions of women in this are so interesting, even like outside of just Mizu and Akemi. We have Madame is it's Ming-Na Wen is the
Izumi?
voice. Um,
Is it
Madame
Madam?
Kaji
Oh, no, dang it. I gotta go.
that is the she runs this brothel and she is like super savvy and everything, but there's these powerful women that are very political
Mm.
and know how to basically run things, and they're also respected so much. And I felt like that was like very unique to see women during this time, and also maybe just in general, like having a say over like their freedom, what they wanted to do, like their businesses, and actually like fighting and participating in like all sorts of physical brawls and stuff like that. I felt like there were just so many things that were shown as far as like women characters, and also just like the sex in terms of like, because there is quite a bit of sex in this, but
I was not
there's
expecting the nudity. Like, I was
I
not.
know from this animation, I was like, okay, wow, that was an animated penis. Okay.
I was like, I have
But
seen so many things watching this show. I was like, well,
Oh,
yeah.
but there's
the
there's often
octopus.
moments where there's
Mhm.
yes, but where like pleasure is depicted, and it's a lot of times it's just like, oh, well, this is going to be a pleasurable experience that we are going to go through together, and it's not always just like a like just for the violence and sexual
Mhm.
abuse of the shock
Right.
factor of a show. I thought it was interesting that we see a little more of that too, that there's women kind of taking charge of their sexuality a little
Like
as
Ringo
well.
losing his virginity.
The
Oh.
peaches.
He just,
Oh,
I was like,
Peaches.
Ringo. I was like, oh, my baby.
He's so amazing. Well, I do think that there's a lot with the like sexuality. They do play with
Yeah.
it a lot, especially with like Akemi. I thought like a lot of other historical shows would make Akemi's character like she does have sex with Taigen pretty early on in the
Mhm.
show. And I was like, oh, it's going to be this huge plot point that they have to hide the fact that
They have
she
to
is
end up together.
deflowered.
And yeah,
So
she's
like
not a
it,
virgin.
yeah, and then it just like kind of didn't matter later on in the
Yeah.
season. And I
And
was
we
like,
can we actually talk about that? Because like, all
Yeah.
right, so first of all, Taigen and Akemi were both like the best, no, the worst, and then eventually the best characters on this
Yes.
yeah.
Akemi. Like I despised Akemi in the beginning.
Same.
Yes. And
So
Taigen too was so terrible.
yes. Because like so like with like so backstory is like Taigen is like he like and Mizu grew up in the same village and he
Mhm.
used to bully her
Mhm.
like for being mixed, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And so like he moves to the big city and he joins a dojo and becomes like the best like samurai in the dojo. And he and Princess Akemi have had sort of like a love affair, except Taigen is a whole like fuckboy.
Yeah. Oh
I mean,
yeah.
like there's no other way to say it. Like,
Yeah.
my God, he's like calculating. He has
Mhm.
like maneuvered this because like he wants to rise above his station.
Mhm.
And then Akemi, who is like basically like the Lord's daughter, is like very naive but very headstrong. And she wants to like get married to Taigen. And so she's like, I'm gonna do like so she like basically maneuvers her dad to get married to Taigen, except he gets defeated by Mizu and has lost his honor. And so like now her dad's like,
Which
no,
becomes all consuming to Taigen to the point where I'm just like, come on, my
it's
guy,
like, bro, let it go.
get
And
with it here.
Well, and at one point he like screams at Muzu, like, the last time we fought, I was drunk. And I was like, they should have animated him a little bit more drunk then, because I do not buy that.
Like I'm just like they were both like in the beginning wholly reprehensible
Mhm.
Yeah.
people. And I especially hated Akemi, and I hated her for um her mix of naivete, but also what is the word like for when she feels like she is owed something by the world? What's that word?
Entitled.
Yeah, she
Well,
was extremely
and she's
entitled.
definitely manipulating so many situations in the beginning for like the bad reasons. And it's just like even like there with Taigen at the beginning when he's defeated, like she immediately like well, she loses her virginity to him, but she uses that as an opportunity to be like, but that fight didn't even count because he
Mhm.
didn't fight you honorably
Mhm.
and convinces Taigen that, oh yeah, like, oh, I should go after Mizu. And it's like, what are you doing? Like this
Mhm.
is and it really sets the story for what happens then for them like meeting up. But still, it's so frustrating if you're trying to get on board with Akemi because you're like, what are you doing? Please, no.
But I think like that's sort of like the mark of like a good writer.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Like you despise her, but then you start to see the method of the
Mhm.
madness as you
Yes.
see her journey where she goes from like this naive, entitled princess and literally goes out into the real world and like gets beaten down, but still like sort of like keeps that spark. And you
Mhm.
see her again, like Akemi's journey is like, oh my gosh, can I just say her like that last line that she had with like Taigen?
It's
When he's like finally seen the light and he's like, you know, we can go away together, this doesn't mean anything, and he actually means it. And she's
Mhm.
Mhm.
like, well, I don't want to go because, and he's like, I don't like, it doesn't matter to me anymore being great. And she's like, I want to be great. And I was
Yeah.
like, damn. I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
like, this was what it was all about. This
Yep.
is what I stuck in there for. I was like, yes.
Mhm.
Well, and it's so interesting
Yeah.
too because she works all this time and to like make her own choices basically, and then she ends up being married off to the shogunate's second son, who we find out is supposed to be like this really reprehensible person, but he's actually like very kind, which shocks Akemi. And so she's like, "Oh, this isn't really that bad." But then
Mhm.
she even decides like even though she thinks he's okay, she's just kind of like, you know what? I don't need a man.
Yeah.
I want to be the best there is. And she even had like went to this brothel and she was going to hire all of the people that worked there to be like her ladies' maids and stuff and all this. So she's like taking things into her own hands. And it just seems like the steps keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger
Mhm.
until she works up to that moment that you're talking about, Namino, where it's just like, well, now I want greatness for myself. I'm not going to wait around on anybody else.
Like Seki is just like the best. Is it Seki or
Yes. Yep.
Seki?
Yep.
Seki's like the best mother ever. And
Oh my
he
God.
was like, oh my gosh, he's like my
Mhm.
dream for Japan
Oh,
is you. And I was like, oh, Seki,
oh,
oh my gosh.
he's so
Like,
wonderful.
like imagine like the love that he gave this girl.
Hmm.
Yes.
Well,
Like,
and he just says
And
like,
it's
I'm the
interesting
one who
too to see
raised
that
you. Like,
progression too, because Seki like really kind of changes like as far as like giving Akemi advice in terms of like, oh, you should probably do this. It's traditional. This is what we've raised you for, to coming to an understanding of like, oh, what I've done is shaped someone who can now make her own
mhm.
choices. And I'm proud of that. And I really want that for you. And so that's like an amazing full circle moment to make, really,
Well,
where it's like, oh my
he
gosh.
was like the Yoda of this, like the one Yoda in this
mhm.
whole situation.
Yeah.
Well, and
Like,
Seki is so interesting because he keeps trying to tell her, like, hey, this is how you get power. Just like do this and like you can get there. And then she like works against him. And finally he's like, look, you need to shape up. And that's actually what I really liked about
Mhm.
Akemi. Like you were saying, she was incredibly entitled at the beginning. And then she goes out into the world and she's like, look at how like tenacious and how willing I am to fight for what I want. And she meets all these people who constantly are like, yeah, but you're just entitled about it. And like you do not understand your own privilege when you walk into these spaces and you don't understand what we've had to do to survive. And you think that like putting on this show means that you're surviving too, when really you get to like go back to your palace at some point if you needed to. And I think that that's a wake up call. And she actually learns from that, where a lot of people wouldn't, where she's like, oh, they're right. I am entitled. So I need to work and make myself great so I have that power to make the changes I'd like to see.
I actually think like that was sort of like a theme underneath the theme of woman, like of what it means to be a woman. Because the whole time they keep saying work under the constraints that you were given, right? Because she keeps trying to like burst outside of her box, and everyone's like, nah, like that's just the path to frustration. So you work in the constraints you are given. Because Seki says that, and like the women at the brothel says that, like, they're just like, all right, like you have a box. It's a very nice box. So you need to learn how to work within your box. Okay, that was just feels like it was an
it's an innuendo.
I mean, they were in a brothel, so but
no, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating to watch, because even then at the end of the season, you kind of find out like the shogunate's wife is the one who kind of pulls the strings and is a little bit more underhanded. And it kind of like reinforces what Akemi has to learn, which is like, oh, look at her in her box and what she's been able to do. No one knew, but she is great. She pulls all the strings. And then it's fascinating to see that turnaround, because you had Taigen at the beginning of the season who seemed more of the manipulative, like, I'm going to work within my box and get what I want. And then he learned like, oh my gosh, it's not worth it. And then Akemi was like, no, it is worth it for me. So we are now at an impasse with each other.
How does everyone feel about Mizu and Mizu's relationship with being a woman?
Well, first of all, I want to talk about her name, because Mizu means water, and like
yes, I had a note about
water,
this.
And for somebody named Water, she is not flexible at all.
No,
like Mizu should have been named whatever the Japanese word for steel is, because she's just like, or earth.
Yeah,
because she is firm. She's unmoving. She's like, I will roll against all obstacles and get it done. Like if it was Avatar The Last Airbender, she would be an earthbender.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's interesting though, because like there's so many like nods to rebirth though, and like the cleansing of water with Mizu, and I think that's kind of why she was given that name, because I think there's like the moment which was a little weird with like the whole festival where like everyone jumps in the water to like
naked.
jumps in the water naked. That's why we see the animated penis.
I've never seen she's jumping in water. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's like that moment, and then I think there was another moment too where we see like Mizu as a child, like as an apprentice to the swordmaster, like walk into water, and then we see Mizu coming out as an adult. So there's kind of like this rebirth that we keep seeing in terms of like the water and how it's like a cleansing almost. I don't know if maybe I'm just
I didn't think I like that.
Like no, totally. Like that is like you are totally correct. I was just sort of like looking at like how she is, but then again, how she is, like Mizu just has like such awful circumstances. Like because like she is the product of what is very well, no, it's definitely sexual assault.
Yes.
She is her and her mother are castigated in the village. She's forced to like pretend to be a man until like so that one
oh my gosh, that episode. So that is one of the standout episodes, and I wasn't expecting this at all. For everyone, it was the episode 5, The Tale of the Ronin and the Bride.
Beautiful episode, really.
Like throughout this entire series, up until episode 5, we've been under the pretense that like Mizu has always been under the affect of portraying her as a man. Because her mother told her as a small child, if anyone were to discover that she were a girl, they would figure out who she was, and that is dangerous for her. So she has to be a boy. So she has always been under the pretense of being a boy. But then we find out that later in life, when she was a little bit younger than where we're at now, she ran into her mother again. And her mother like
Which
helped
is
her.
not her mother.
We
A
do find
woman
out that it's not
raised
her
her.
mother, but the woman who raised her, they run into each other again in another life. She thought her mother had died in a fire and she hadn't. And she kind of helps Mizu like get her strength back after she got into a fight. And then her mother convinces Mizu to become someone's bride. Like she arranges a
Mhm.
marriage for her. And Mizu has this life where she is openly a woman for a period of time. And it was
Yeah.
so fascinating to watch what that meant for her and the
Especially like
complications.
seeing the relationship play out because her a husband is someone who is kind of like a disgraced
Hmm.
person and he a disgraced samurai and
Yes.
he seems to have so many like it, I don't know if anxieties is the word I'm looking for, but he's very like uneasy with himself and with Mizu and it's just you can just feel it in the
Hmm.
show like how volatile he is just like right under the surface there because you're just like mm, this doesn't seem like a trustworthy character but okay but they grow to have more of an understanding of each other through like the training of horses and it's really through her Mizu kind of opening herself up a little more and showing that she's not just like tip into typical stereotypical things that women
Hmm.
like or would do and it helps them to bond and grow in a relationship but then it ultimately backfires horribly.
That's like the thing that got me was that like, all right, so he marries her, right? And she's not the typical wife because she can't cook. And like
Mhm.
he is disgusted every time she like, and you can see it on his face, but like
Hmm.
he still eats it. Like he's trying, she's trying, and like at one point it seems like a beautiful romance, right?
Hmm.
Because he's like not bothered by the fact that she's so strong and like they have this love of horses and everything is great until uh,
Until.
until he asks her to show him who she
Hmm.
truly is because
Mhm.
like he notices like oh she knows a little bit of sword fighting
Hmm.
like a little bit of the deadly arts so he like asks her to show him the fullness of herself and she
Yep.
defeats him
Yep.
and the moment she defeats him it's like that fantasy splinters and all
Hmm.
of a sudden he hates her and it's so and it just sort of ties back to like this thing in the theme in this TV show where like the women are telling each other like you need to like embrace his weaknesses and become his strength but you can't be more than him you can't like I was just like
Well, and it also
Well,
just showed, it was so interesting because Laura and I talk on this podcast a lot about like how certain people will allow others in until it becomes no longer
Mhm.
beneficial to them
Mhm.
or until it, questions part of their identity. And I
yeah.
feel like he definitely showed his colors when it came to
Mhm.
that because he was fine with her
Mhm.
up until it made him question his own identity and his own power in the world. And then all of a sudden he turned on her
Mhm.
Well,
and
yeah, because
it.
then it brought out all of his insecurities.
Mhm. And it kind of shows his own failing. And like that episode was mind blowing because at the end of it, he's already shown that he's insecure. And then these people come to attack Mizu saying that like, she has the blue eyes. So she's
They're
obviously
there
who they've
for
been like,
they're there for like ransom or something,
yeah,
basically.
because someone wants to see her dead. And then he sees it like from far away and he runs the other way and turns away. And then he
But
comes
like the
back.
implication is that either him or the
Or the
mother,
mom.
both
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
them colluded to because like she has like a bounty on her head.
Hmm.
So it's like probably he called them or like he and the mother called
Yeah.
them and it's
Well,
just
because we found out the mom is dealing with like
Opium
opium
addiction.
addiction
yeah.
Yeah.
and is kind of mad that they aren't gonna like
They cut her
provide
off.
opium to her. So there's like the implication that maybe the mom could have done it, but also that is
He
it
could have done
Mikio
it.
that he did it
Mikio,
because he
yeah.
was just so insecure and
Hmm.
cowardly that he could have done it. And then there's a tragic ending to all of it because Mizu ends up killing the people who came
Well,
to collect her, and then
yeah.
the husband and her mother, the woman who raised her, get into a fight, and Mikio ends up killing her mother, and then
Hmm.
she ends up killing Mikio. Ugh.
And it was such a tragic ending, but it was one that I was really impressed with how it played out
Yeah.
because they don't tell you the answer of like who turned her in. It's
Mhm.
kind of like at that point, it doesn't matter because she
Yeah.
literally
Right.
can't trust them and she
Mhm.
has to move on from this life. And it's so sad because it's like the one time you see Mizu like in her element where she was actually finding like fulfillment outside of revenge and it just got
Yeah.
taken away from her
Yeah.
immediately.
And
And
you
it really
know,
helps you see how the character was built into, like, how this built Mizu into being who she was. Ugh.
because like for like a brief glimmering moment, you think she's gonna have a happy ending. And
Mhm,
what I really liked was like the narrative structure of this episode, because it's like there's this play that's happening that
mhm,
is explaining a fantastical story, but you also see what's happening with Mizu in the past with her and her husband, and then you
mhm,
see her in the future. And like that's one of the things I really liked about Blue-Eyed Samurai is like there's like two concurrent storylines running where it's like
Mhm.
Mizu in the present, but you're also learning about her past. And
mhm.
like each one sort of always builds on the other in
Yeah.
such an
Right.
amazing way. And with this one, then there were three stories running, and they
Mhm.
all built on each other in this incredible way.
Yeah.
I'd like bringing it all back to just identity of womanhood of Mizu. I really love these types of stories, and I've noticed them a lot.
Mhm.
Like Laura and I also read Shelley Parker Chan's She Who Became the Sun, which
Yeah.
also has a little bit of like a woman pretending to be a man to like get into specific societal places. And it's always interesting seeing these because it does feel like it's discussing womanhood, but it's also discussing like being a little bit more gender fluid or seeing, what changes about you if you are
Mhm.
representing yourself as a man and like who you become through that. And I think that they do that a lot with Mizu because we also see, like you said, Namina in her background, like the beginning of her, like wrapping her breasts and making sure like she is represented as a man and what she does and like her interactions with her with the sword master where she like almost tells him that she's a woman and he's like
And then it doesn't matter.
yeah, and then it just doesn't matter to him and then they have all these conversations like
A foolish boy, and you will
yeah.
be a foolish man, meaning he already knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like, yeah.
then there's literally a scene where she's, the rebirth that Laura talked about. Like
Mhm.
she's standing naked in the snow and he's just standing next to her and he can't see, but you also know that like it
He just
doesn't
knows.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very interesting to see all of that.
Yeah, it's also cool with the Swordmaster, just like how accepting he is of Mizu. Like it doesn't, like you said, Hannah, it does not matter at all that Mizu is a woman. He's just more concerned with like the kind of person that she is and concerned about like, well, you're gonna kill yourself if you only are concerned about revenge. So I I just think it's nice that we have a few characters that actually are like they
I
don't care what gender you are.
I loved one of the things that he said, like, because there's this one episode where this person comes to him for a sword.
Mm,
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and they are misrepresenting who they are because they're a very bad person. And they get the sword.
mhm.
And Mizu is like, well, shouldn't we like, do something? And he's like, listen, you can only be concerned about the state of your own soul. And I was like, that is a whole word. Like
Yep.
yeah.
Also, a lot of the themes through this, like Mizu's learning how to make swords, and through it, she learns that you have to have imperfections in the metal, or else if you have something that's too perfect, it's too weak and it will bend
Mhm.
and break. And
Yeah.
that's what happened with the person who misrepresented themselves, where Mizu's trying to make the sword, and Mizu is someone who like likes perfection and likes like strength, and so she makes it and it breaks, and then he's like, "Well, this is what he gets. It's a free sword." So and then with
It's
her,
interesting too because it just plays into like her own identity and how she's
Mhm,
always been told that because she is of mixed race that she is not perfect, that she's something that's disgusting and ugly and to be frowned upon. And so the comparisons to like the sword making and that they need to have imperfections
mhm.
in order to be strong is really powerful.
And then she makes her own sword that breaks, and she like realizes she's not worthy of it quite yet, and she leaves it behind for the final thing. I loved that and like the
Mhm.
use of the sword as a metaphor.
Yeah.
Um,
But can we talk about Abijah file? Because
okay,
like,
yeah, I was
Oh
about to bring
yes.
it up.
oh my God.
just what an interesting character.
He is a brilliant character.
Yes.
Brilliantly done, brilliantly executed, just so chilling, right? Because, like, I mean, he seems like if you met this man, you'd be like, oh, such a nice, cheerful person. Like,
Mhm,
he's like cool, right? Like, he seems laid back,
mhm.
except he's a monster,
Yeah.
like an absolute monster. And, like, I think it's so amazing the way that they introduce him because, like, the first time you see him, he's like doing a painting,
Mhm.
right? And he's like complaining about how he's like locked in this castle and he can
Yes.
only
If I
leave.
have time to paint, Berber.
Because and he can only leave once a year on the spring. I forgot what Matsuri, I think it's called, like
Yeah.
where he like goes on a pilgrimage and like, and by pilgrimage I mean he goes like all across Japan, just like doing like just going in orgies and doing awful things until he goes to pay respects to the emperor, and then he has to go back to like his castle that's like off like in a cliff in like the middle of the ocean.
Mhm.
But we see him painting and we don't see the painting until the end, and the painting is of like a man being disemboweled by a bull, and then you're like, okay, this man is like really fucked up. But
Mhm.
then pan to, there's actually a person there that has been disemboweled by a bull, and that was what he was painting.
Mhm.
So many of the things around this character are just sickening.
Oh,
Like, there's no other way to describe it. Like the episode where Mizu is like trying to enter the castle, and
Oh yeah.
then Fowler is saying some of these things to Mizu, and it's just like you could about puke hearing some of this. Like, oh,
like
it's
the fact that like the tunnels underneath his castle are like they are strewn with the bones of his children,
Of his children. Yeah.
his
When
his quote unquote bastards, and like
yes,
yeah.
a lot of them are babies,
Yep.
yes,
Yeah, we
right?
find that he like just says it at the end because Mizu's
Mhm.
having this final showdown and he's like, "Look, I don't think I'm your dad because I'm pretty sure all of my babies were down in those like areas you were in." And
Yeah,
it's just he's obviously
it's disgusting.
But you
uh
know, it's so funny that he is like he is both a picture of trauma, but also of entitlement. Like
mhm,
it
Hmm.
is like because on one hand, so to my understanding, it's like I think he's like, is he Scottish or Irish or something? He's like,
Yeah, I think so. I think it's
I think he's coded
Irish.
as oh, I thought yeah, maybe Scottish or Irish. I know it's one of those. So,
right.
yeah.
So like his like people were like basically destroyed by the Tudors and like they were
Mhm,
starved out. And so he like tells this awful story about how like his parents died and then he like had to like keep his little sister alive until she died too and he ate her kidney,
mhm.
Hmm.
right? And he like
Yeah.
always thinks about like, and every time he eats, like he remembers eating her kidney.
Yep.
And he doesn't say this with like any type of disgust, because like it's clear he's like gone past that, like whatever
Mhm,
disgust or horror he had, he's like gone past that. And now he just like seeks whatever the most horrific thing is. Cause like this is a guy who thinks nothing like of like having sex with a person and killing them,
yeah.
and having the blood drip on. Like it's just like a lot. But like one of the he said like a couple of things that really struck me, but like one of the things that he said, because like he has this whole plan where he like wants to take over Japan.
Mhm,
And like that's like sort of like the thing that's running under the whole story is that he and like his cohorts are gonna take over the shogunate. And so like when he has that confrontation, he's like, I know you guys think my face is ugly because like the whole time that we've seen him with like the Japanese people, they are
mhm.
disgusted by the fact that he drinks milk. They
Yes.
think he's ugly and all of these things. And he says something that like is so true and so accurate. He's like, when I'm done with this country, this face that you think is so ugly, you'll think it's prettier than your own.
Yep.
Hmm. Ugh.
He is Irish. I looked that up, and I do think like he is definitely the look of colonialism because, like you said, like
Yes.
everyone is disgusted by him, but
Mhm.
like throughout the series, like he does meet with the shogunate's children, and they're
And he's
obviously.
offering them gold and everything
Hmm.
too. He makes multiple
Mhm.
comments about how he's making people rich and everything.
And it's obvious that they're disgusted by him and they do not like him and they think he's bad, but they're still willing to work with him as long as they benefit from the interaction.
Mhm.
And in doing that, they also are allowing certain cracks to unfold where he's able to get his people inside and get into the areas where he needs to go.
Mhm.
And it is like the showing, like, when I'm done with you, you're going to think I'm beautiful. Like, we know the historical context for that, which makes it even deeper and darker, that, to come into this world where there's only 4 white men in this entire country and to like lay waste to the entire country the way they did, where like they have all these repercussions, you kind of have to know that that person is devoid of like feeling and empathy. And it's
Mhm.
very interesting to watch as the main villain.
I
But
mean, yeah, oh my gosh, like I don't think like a villain affected me as much as he did in like such a long time. Like he was frightening.
yeah.
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 And the fact that he was able to survive at the end of the season is
I know that
also
that was just like such an unsatisfying thing, honestly, when you find out that, I mean, I get it that they're trying to open it up for more TV, but at the same time, when you're watching this and you see what a horrible person Fowler is, you're just like,
Don't
please
let him
go.
live.
yeah.
Exactly, like
Not
get rid
let
of
him
him.
live. But you know what I found so interesting was that like so like the shogunate is all like we have all these swords and well Fowler has guns and
Mhm.
like how did y'all think that y'all like were gonna stand against like him with the gun, like that was like the one, but like I understood, like I guess I understood in the historical context.
Yeah.
I was just like, when a new technology comes in, adapt or die. Like that's one thing that
Yeah.
I was like, adapt or die.
I mean, it does show, but it goes back to the Tigan of it all, where he's like, well, that's not the heroic way to do things. You do
Well, and
things
that's
in
what
like
it
the
is too,
form.
I think,
Yeah.
in the history of it also, is that they were kind of like
Mhm,
dedicated to swords because they were like, this is the honorable way to fight. Like, you don't fight with guns.
mhm,
And if you did, like, that's the whole thing about fighting with swords. Like, when you fight with swords, you're facing your opponent. You have to
mhm,
interact with them. Like, you understand the ramifications of it.
Yeah.
So, like, then to come up with this gun, you're like, oh, we're going to be playing by the same rules. We're still going to understand each other and see each other. And he's like, no, I am so disassociated from the person I'm killing. It doesn't matter anymore. And like, they never saw it coming. And it's interesting to see
mhm,
them like not think that through.
mhm.
But,
There's one point where he says like for an entire country to be so dedicated to not being impolite, even when you're about to kill thousands of people, and then the other guy's
mhm.
like, "Do we really have to kill thousands of people?" And he's like, "Yeah, bro. Like, what do you think this is?"
Yeah.
Hmm. He's definitely the character that's like, I think, kind of like making the stakes real for the other characters, where
Hmm.
a lot of them seem to almost feel like they're going through the motions. They don't think that things are going to escalate the way that they've been told they're going to escalate.
Mhm,
And then Fowler's just like, no, this is happening.
mhm.
Like, here it is. And this
Yeah.
is what I want to do. And it's going to be pretty terrible. And I'm going to laugh about it.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
can we talk about Mizu and Taigen's relationship a little bit? Because I know there's no queer relationships in this really, besides we see Mizu observe some people in the brothel kissing, but the way that Taigen and Mizu interact before Taigen even knows that Mizu is a woman, I I really liked that because it's just very much like there's so much sexual tension between them. And I just really appreciated it and thought it was kind of neat that they portrayed it this way. How, did anybody else have feelings on this?
Oh yeah, but then there's like also like that moment, like I think it's like the second to last episode
hmm.
Mhm.
where they have that one moment where they're like super aware of each
Sparring.
other, and then
Yeah.
they're like, I got no, 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 we can't do this, we can't do this.
Yeah.
He's like, I miss a Kemi. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I I liked it from the queer aspects because it doesn't feel like Taigen ever has shame in the fact that like he was
Mhm.
aroused by Mizu, even though he believes that she's a man.
Mhm.
I will say I didn't love the fact that there were romantic undertones between the two of them because I hate seeing
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
young child who abused me became a viable love
Yes,
interest later in
agreed,
life.
Hannah. Agreed. I think I just was more like, it's cool that Taigen doesn't care if
And I
Mizu
think
is a man.
they're trying to work away from it, but because I think in one flashback they show that Taigen, like all the boys are literally chasing Mizu with stones, and he like drops the stone, and I'm like, oh great, he didn't try to be a young child. Like,
Yeah.
let's not give him a gold star for that. But I
Yeah.
do think they're trying to point out, like, oh, he had a bad home life. Maybe he wasn't as abusive as she remembers. Maybe he was just an active participant, but he wasn't the main instigator. But I'm like, but still, don't love seeing that on screen. Let's
Yeah.
not teach young girls that boys can be
Mhm.
up on us and they become
Yeah.
viable later in life.
Right.
But I did appreciate that there's never any shame with Taigen, or like it doesn't feel there are moments in the show that kind of show the beauty of like same-sex relationships or just like different
Mhm.
types of relationships, and there's no shame in like watching different types of like things that arouse you or things like that. So I liked
Right.
that. I also did want to bring up as a random thing because I thought it was good to know for like historical context. One other thing that rubbed me a little bit the wrong way, and I read up on it, and like there's different people who see it differently. But Mizu's relationship with her teeth blackening, I kept thinking it
Or
was a very
Akemi's.
I'm sorry, Akemi, sorry. Akemi's views on her teeth blackening didn't feel historically accurate to me in the way where I was like, this feels like it's more of an aesthetic thing, and it feels very Western to be like, well, white teeth are the beauty standard. And so I looked into it a little bit more, and it seems like a lot of people say that it's not really about Akemi working against her teeth being blackened. It's more about the marriage that she
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
fighting
Freedom.
against that. And
That was how I read it, was that she didn't want to be married and she did not want to have to wife.
Mhm.
Well, she didn't want to be married to like anybody that wasn't Taigen.
yeah, and now she doesn't even want to be married to him. So yeah,
Mhm.
I get the second reading, but I also saw like some people also had my criticism where they were like, no, it seems like that's just like an aesthetic norm, but it does seem like you have to be like a quote unquote woman to get your teeth blackened. So that was what
I
she was fighting against.
I feel like I'm a bad feminist because I was like, girl, if you don't sit at home and like marry the person your father told you to marry and stop all this nonsense. Like I felt like watching her, I was like, am I a bad feminist or like am I just like old? Because I was just like, man, if you don't stop this, like you are too like you're a princess. Sit at home. Sit at home. Like, yeah, because yeah.
That's how I feel about when Laura and I both watch Bridgerton, and whenever I watch Eloise, I'm like, she's just so hashtag like second wave feminism. Like she's just like, I want to be free. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, like try to work for other people too, Akemi. Don't just work hard to
Mhm.
marry the one person you want to marry. Want a little
Doesn't
bit
even really
more.
like you.
Right. Like
That was the other thing. I was like, bro, you don't even know. Like, this man does not care about you. Like,
Yeah.
literally cut to next scene. He is in a bar surrounded
mm-hmm,
by women who are kissing him.
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Bragging
then he
about
spends
you.
like the majority of the show like not really caring about Akemi too much and like really lusting after Mizus.
Because
It
I'm
did
like, you were about to marry her and now you're running off after, please.
It did feel
Mhm.
weird at the end when he was all of a sudden like, I have to get to Akemi. And like, do you? You
Yeah.
seemed really fine beforehand.
Actually, I really liked Akemi's husband for her. I'm like, he's manageable.
Yeah.
You got this.
he was really interested in like making sure she was happy, and
Yeah.
yeah. Uh,
Can I also mention though when we're talking about like Taigen towards the end there where Mizu's like he's probably destined for greatness. He's a great man. And I'm like, mm, are, did we forget about some things? Like, I don't know about that, Mizu. Like, that's maybe giving Taigen a lot of credit. I don't know.
Again, there are certain times where you're just like, Mizu, don't forget that this is the second person you found sexually attractive ever. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Like,
Like,
I don't know.
yeah. Uh,
I did want to mention just because I have watched a few like TikTok videos on this, and I think it's worth noting that there has been some commentary online about this show in terms of like how some people feel that it's almost like a fetishization of like white features and white centerism, almost where it's like the features that Mizu has that are typically white people features are the ones that are kind of like seen desirable to white people are the ones that are really commented on in this. And I I think that there were a lot of people saying that if they were of mixed race that they felt seen by this portrayal of Mizu, but there were also a lot of people saying like, oh, well, it seems a little bit white centerist and that we're in this show, it seemed very Western, like a Westernized take, and almost like a little I a little icky to have it be focused on like, oh, the white features are awesome. Like, you're so cool, Mizu, and it's because you have blue eyes, and it's because of the things about you that are white, which I think is worth mentioning. And I also think though that there were a lot of mixed race people who felt seen by this character at the same time.
So
So,
I looked at it and I looked at just like initially that was like my thing going in. I was like, ah,
mhm.
God, right? But then in the context of the show, I understood because it wasn't like
Yeah.
her blue eyes were something that was like commented on favorably. No, like Mizu was getting hell because of
Mhm.
that, right? And so like that's why I found the story interesting and I understand why like mixed race people would feel seen by this, right? Because it's that in the show, Mizu, because she is of a mixed race, is treated horrifically, right?
Mhm.
She is like there's all these things about like pure versus impure and all of that stuff. So I think like initially when I went into the show, like that was I was already rolling my eyes back. I started the show reluctantly. I was like, ah, da, da. But
Mhm.
then in the context of the show, I was like, ah, okay, I get it. Like I see
Mhm.
like where this is coming from and I understand the context. And like don't like as I saw the show, I didn't think that it was like, oh, we're glorifying like whiteness because in the show there's one white person and he is the worst.
Yeah.
I also felt that way, Namina, but again, I'm for
Mhm.
I
for
think it's
listeners, I'm a white woman and I obviously have a lot of blind spots and
I think it's
don't always have best takes.
I think it's important to know, like, yeah, it definitely has a Western type view, but I
Yeah.
do appreciate in the show that it is looking at like a time period where they were isolated from white people. So her features did stand out in ways
Yeah.
Mhm.
that were commented on negatively because like no one had interacted with that. And it, like, there's never a moment where I believe like someone looks at her and they're like, oh, you're so beautiful because of your blue eyes. Most of them are like, that's a weird look. Like, I don't appreciate that.
Hmm.
You're not the beauty standard. And I
Yeah.
think that that helped it along with the fact that like this wasn't
I think that
like
I don't know
memoirs
that
of
the
a
takes that like
geisha where
people made online were necessarily directed at like the characters of the show, but
yeah.
more so like the show itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the overall thing where it's just like, oh, our hero is someone who
Is
is
special.
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
because of their white characteristics. And I do think that the show itself just from my opinion handled it better because they set the scene for why Mizu would be treated this way and Mizu was not treated well.
Yeah.
So,
I
I think maybe because I watch a lot of anime, like and by a lot, like I watch an enormous, like actually anime is like the number one thing that I watch. And so maybe when I'm watching this, like this is anime tangential because of course it wasn't made in Japan. And
mhm,
so like that's like, and perhaps that's why when I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, okay, there's space for this, but
mhm.
that might be because I watch anime, right?
Yes.
mhm,
Mhm.
sure.
So,
So
but I do think that like in the context of this show, what I really enjoyed about it was that it really did talk about colonialism and about the not just the entitlement, but like the gall that
mhm,
it took to be like, I'm gonna come to this country and I'm gonna like take it over,
mhm.
right? Because like underneath it all, that's like yes, it's like Mizu trying to find her father and kill him and all this stuff. Yes, 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 revenge. But like what I appreciated about it was that it's like it took us down this road where you're like, oh, this is what the colonial mentality was. Like for me, as someone who comes from like a like because I grew up like I'm from Sierra Leone, right?
Mhm.
So as someone who comes from like a colonized place, like especially watching like what's his name, Abijah Fowler,
Mhm.
like just all the interactions with him and like seeing that like well it wasn't affirming but it was just like damn this is
Yeah.
like like
Right.
it's
Hmm.
I also think this
yeah
benefited from being an animated show because they were
Sure.
able to play with Mizu in a way that a lot of like if this were a live action show they couldn't do, because like Mizu has androgynous features. I would say like Mizu is not like what we would term like aesthetically like the beauty standard of pretty, even if you aren't considering like Asian culture. And it's different than like Laura and I both recently started watching Ugly Betty. And it's really hard to watch people look at America Ferrera and call her
Yeah.
fat and ugly when we're like, no, that is an
No.
objectively beautiful woman. You can't
Right.
just put braces on her and tell me she's ugly.
Right.
Whereas Mizu was believable as a dude.
Yes,
Right.
Like I
exactly.
believe that. Like even though I knew going in, when
Mhm.
she took her clothes off, I was like, oh, she's
Yeah.
a girl.
Peaches.
Peaches. Yeah.
But
And so I do think it was benefited by that, and it helps a little bit where like, and I mentioned like Memoirs of a Geisha where they're like, oh, she has
Yeah.
like these exotic blue eyes on this beautiful face. It's not that. And I do think
Yeah.
that helped, but I also agree, Laura, it's important context to be like, yeah, also we hyperfixate on Western standards.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because I know that there have been a lot of people who have felt this way, and I had not considered that, but I just wanted to mention it and to
I think
add
it's,
some context.
I
That's-
agree.
I totally agree. Like, and I went in thinking that, and then I left not thinking that.
Yeah.
You know, that's my experience with it.
I also do want to shout out to the artwork because I thought it was beautiful.
Yes.
The showrunners have like a 3/4D hybrid animation, and they said they wanted it to look like a moving painting. And I just think that they did a great job because it looks
Especially
beautiful.
episode 5 when she turns into the Onryo.
Oh my gosh, I
Yes,
loved that so
like the
much.
flash between the two. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Do you know if it was a situation where like any of the action scenes were things that they like shot, like filmed, and then they painted over? Because I know that like in the Prime Video show Undone, it was something that they filmed it and then they painted over it. And I didn't know if this was something similar or if this was just purely animation, because the 3D like nature of this is very much giving me vibes of that, but I didn't really look into it.
I don't know. I didn't look into it either, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that'd be really cool if they studied it and made sure they were doing it justice. So
also like the animation in episode 6 where she's going into the castle, like through the dungeon part there. It's so like vibrant and like psychedelic and scary. Like, ugh.
Can I just say, like, episode 6 took me out. Like when they had to hit the monkeys.
oh
Yeah,
my
like
gosh.
I can't handle that kind of stuff. It freaks me out.
I was like, monkeys blowing like pollen in your psychedelic pollen in your face, and then there were zombies.
Yeah, like
which also made me like feel really icky when Fowler was like, "Those are my children." I'm like, "Those were like, oh."
I was like, what was he doing to these people?
I know, because that I wondered that too. I was like, is this some kind of like really creepy like torture thing? Oh, I don't know.
And then I'm not sure if this is in episode 6, but like when he goes to the chapel.
oh
Like,
yeah.
oh yeah.
Oh, that was
He was
so
like,
dark.
yeah, they built this for me because they thought I would like, and then
But luckily
But
it's
then he
next to
like
the
bargains
dungeon.
with like Jesus. He's like, I
Mhm.
will make you an entire country of belief. Like, so okay. I just want to say, so like I'm from Sierra Leone, right? And we were colonized by the British. So for me, I won't say it's affirming, but watching this show and watching Abijah Fowler as he like has that conversation with Jesus about like making a country of believers, or has that conversation with like the Shogun like about like making everyone love his face over their own. Like growing up where I grew up and like seeing that in action, seeing the effects of colonization still in action in my country, and not just there, but here. Because like, I mean, in America, as a Black woman, like the fact that like I can't like walk around with like my hair in a natural state because people are like, oh my gosh, it's unkept. I mean, I could, yes, I could, right? But like as a Black person, like the fact that like my hair in a natural state, people are automatically like, oh my gosh, it's so wild, it's so this, it's so that. So then you have to spend all this time like trying to do your hair, like, and then just seeing this.
Mhm. Well, it's saying the quiet part out loud, and he does that
Yeah.
every time, and it's important because he, points out the fact that a lot of colonizers did not believe that they were bringing the good word, or they just thought they were better than someone, and they thought that they were superior to the people they were coming to, and they would say anything to get the power they wanted. And
Mhm.
he just shows that in the most like purest of forms as a colonizer, and it's
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
very
yeah.
much like you said, that he's just like not trying to have any layers to this at all. He's just like, here's what it is.
And then
Yeah.
I'm like, I see, like if he had won, like
Mhm.
I see what would have happened had he won. Like,
Yeah.
so like that's why it's just like watching him just filled me with not a fear, but I was like, yes. Like it was just like, this is, like a lot of times I have conversations with people where I'm just like, because where like, in African circles, you get called out on certain things, and you're like,
Mhm.
well, that is because of colonization. Like the thing that you're trying to get me to do is because of colonization, and people
Mhm.
don't see that. And like now I can like show people and be like, can you watch this show?
Yeah.
And then be like, can
Yeah.
we talk about it? Because all of these things that you're saying, such and such and such, this, like,
That's it. Yeah.
that's it. Yeah. So yeah.
He- He's
That's
a
that's why I resonated so much with the show. Like honestly,
Hmm.
at the end of it, it was because seeing him in action, I was like,
Yeah.
this is what I've been talking about.
hmm.
This is what we've experienced. Like that one line where he was like, you will value my face over my own. I was like, that is, yeah.
Well, and I think that's really important context to hear
Hmm.
because, as Laura said, we are two white women, so
Hmm.
we're both American, so we don't have as much like of that background other than what we bring to the table, which is our blind spots, like Laura said.
Hmm.
And to have these types of shows where we get to watch that in action and have other people feel seen, that's so super important to hear. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing it. Like,
And like, not saying that like people should use this as like historical text. Like, don't use Netflix shows as like
Yeah, please
historical
don't.
text to
Please
learn
don't.
your history and stuff. But it is important from the standpoint of like maybe just like opening up some of these ideas in people that
mhm.
they can recognize them in other things and in the real world, that these things have happened and are happening.
Well, and
And I'm
even
like,
like this is I'm also watching Shogun right now, tangentially related. And
Mhm.
there is a moment where the the Japanese people find out that the Portuguese people think they own Japan, or they have like
Mhm.
laid claim to Japan. And it's like watching people find out that like their own country, like others out there believe that they own them. And it's incredibly like moving and shocking when you're watching it happen in action, and then you think like, oh no, this did happen. Like we just don't talk about it, we don't talk
Right.
about that feeling. And it is like eye-opening, and it's good to have these different representations where you can see it and see all different sides to it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Did
uh
anybody have any like favorite moments or characters?
I mean, well, Ringo is my baby.
Yeah.
I just want good things for Ringo, he's so sweet.
I also loved Ringo, but honestly, like I I kind of ended up really liking Akemi. I feel like
Ooh, like
Akemi was maybe my favorite character besides
at the end,
Ringo.
at
Yeah.
the like I feel like it was the last two episodes where like what, like Akemi, like the all, like I would say all first, like, okay, let's be real, I hated her
Oh yeah.
6 episodes. Episode 7, I was like, I see what they're cooking. Episode 8, I was like, oh, I love her. I will
Yeah,
follow, I
when you
will
get
watch
the
the
full
next
arc.
show. I will watch the next season for her.
I feel like she's just the standout by the end of the
Yeah.
season. Like she's just had the fully developed arc. And like
Yeah.
I have such a soft spot for Mizu, but mostly I'm just like, oh honey, don't make that choice. Don't make that choice. Don't. And then I'm like, okay, I guess we let you
Same.
make that choice.
So like
Same, where it's like, oh no.
I think like, so this is the thing. I think Mizu is an exemplary
Oh
um
yeah.
like protagonist. I really do. And it is because she's an exemplary protagonist that I'm like, I don't really want to talk because I'm like, it's understood.
Yeah.
We love her. She's great. She's amazing. We're gonna watch the show because of her. And so
Mhm.
that we can focus on the other characters around her because she is great. Like, I mean, like there isn't anything like I could say about Mizu that I didn't
Mm.
like.
Right.
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 I was compelled by her journey. I think she's an amazing character, you know, and it is because of that I'm like, okay, yeah, we know she's great. We can talk about other people.
Do we have any standout moments that we're just like, oh, that's it? Like that was the season for me. I'm so happy with it. Or not even that's the season, but like no one else like noticed it or I noticed it was a favorite of mine. Mine
Um,
is definitely Ringo going, I don't even make the best soba noodles in the area. I thought that was such a beautiful moment.
as a foodie, when he was sitting there and he was like, oh my gosh, this is transcendent. I was like, that's exactly what I would say. That's exactly what I would say. But like actually a couple of there were three moments I loved, right? The first one was when Akemi decides to go off to go find Tigan and she gets robbed. Um
Mhm.
and that woman and one of the robbers is a woman.
Mhm.
Um and Akemi throws one of her slippers at her and she's like, you're lucky and the woman's like, you're lucky I'm a man, and then she takes her other slipper,
Mhm.
Hmm.
right? Because like at that point Akemi does not understand
Hmm.
how much danger she is in,
Yep.
right? She
Yep.
like just thinks, oh, duh, duh, duh. And like that woman slaps her. And I was just
Mhm.
like, yes, you
Hmm.
needed
Yep.
that. Like, because like that's the first start of her like sort of starting to understand. And even then she keeps barreling forward.
Mhm.
So there was that. And then there's that moment where Ringo is sitting with like that guy, like when Mizu gets invited to tea. And
Mhm.
obviously tea is code for an ambush.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, and Ringo is like cooking noodles for that like very obviously villainous guy.
Mhm.
And like the guy gets like a signal and he's like, oh, bad signs, I'm about to kill. But like Ringo has fed him poison and mushrooms.
Yep.
He's like, snowcat. And I was like, yeah. And that was a moment where I was like, thank God he's not an idiot. He's just
Hmm.
nice.
Yeah,
But
he's
he's
just a
not
nice
nice.
guy.
Yeah. He's just a nice
I
guy.
love that because it was set up earlier in the episode too. And I like the second
Yeah.
it showed him cooking, I'm like, he's cooking the mushrooms. We're good. He's safe. Like he's fine. And I loved the action of that scene
Mhm.
too, because you have like Mizu and Taigen trying to get away from all of the archers all at once, and you have them like running with horses and they're grabbing Ringo and they're leaving. And I just that entire episode was so unique. It was pretty early
Hmm.
on, so we didn't talk about it much, but I loved that scene. I thought it was really effective.
And then my last one, of course, was okay, me being like, I want to be great. And I was like, finally, like she has her head on straight.
Yep.
Yeah. So those were my moments.
Hannah, what about you?
Uh, I would say I greatly enjoyed like every moment of the play that we saw and the with the Ronin. I thought that was really effective. And at the end when the Onryo comes in and like you
Hmm.
have Akemi with her blackened teeth and she's like, I've met an Onryo in real life.
Yeah.
And at that moment I wasn't fully on board with Akemi, but I'm like, that's really effective storytelling
Yeah.
at least. Where like you know that she's misjudging Mizu in a certain way because Mizu wasn't fully wrong for sending her back
Right.
because she was like, you're not helpful in this situation and you would be holding me back. But like
But
it
also
was
it's
just
safer for you to like,
yeah. And it was very interesting that like those were the moments where like Ringo was like, I can't believe you gave her back. And I was like, no, I kind of agree with Mizu, but it's
Yeah.
really effective storytelling to have those two as like almost foils for each other because they never see eye to eye, but you're like on both of their sides for different reasons. And I thought that was
Hmm.
really effective in that episode, and I just loved it. And I have to agree, Namina, just her standing up, down, saying, I want to be great when you have Taigen's like different arc of he wants to be happy and he doesn't know how to. I think it'll be interesting to see them move on from that in season two. Laura, what about you?
So probably all of or not season, all of episode 5 was a highlight for me. I thought that episode was just phenomenal. But I
Mhm.
also really just towards the beginning when Ringo says that his whole life has been a battle, like that was just like that really resonated with me. Like as someone with chronic illness and like I have a family member who's disabled, like just that really resonated with me. And I appreciated that. But I also, this is not a great moment, but the part where Madame Kaji asks Mizu to go and find her, that girl that she cared about,
Yeah.
that was such a
Oh my gosh,
heartbreaking
yeah.
moment, and it really just like I couldn't stop thinking about it honestly, and it was very hard to watch, and like all of the scenes leading up to that and everything, it was just like you thought it was going to go a different way and it didn't,
Yeah.
and it was really heartbreaking to watch, but it was just like a really effective for as a viewer for this show, so I really liked it.
I remember gasping when Mizu was like, I've got you. And then she breaks her neck. That was
Yeah.
so like you're sitting there and you're hoping it can go a different way. But I think that's where
And
the
then
show.
I'm sorry. And then after all that
I
shit,
know.
after
Yeah.
all that,
Then the little boy catches her. And it's
Yeah.
just like, I was so frustrated. And there are moments like I also love the beginning fight scene where you find out that Mizu's been fighting with weights on her, like
yeah.
to show
Oh, yeah.
just
Yeah, that she's fighting essentially with like she's handicapping herself.
yeah. So yeah, so many great moments.
Yeah,
Any final thoughts that like we haven't covered that you can think about?
I'm just excited for season 2.
I
me
can't
too.
wait.
Yeah, they announced it like really quickly afterwards. So like the first episode of the show came out on YouTube and got people excited about it, and then they released the full season on Netflix. It became a big hit. It has like really high score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is
It's
unheard
like
of.
almost 100%
Yeah,
on
it's
Rotten
unheard
Tomatoes.
of score.
Yeah.
And it got or I guess it's getting a second season. It was announced really quickly, which is also shocking for Netflix that they didn't just try to
5 years
shut
later,
this
I
one
think we have
down.
it.
But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited too.
Well, Namina, thank you so much for coming
Yes,
on. If you
thank
want to
you.
come back on for season 2, 3, 4, however many they make, you are
Yeah.
always welcome. Okay, perfect. Standing invitation. Namina, can you tell everyone where they can find you and where they can find your books as well?
Well, you can find my books anywhere, like in any bookstore where books are sold, and at the library. I love the library. Go to the library, but also if you can, please buy from like a local bookstore. Like that would be amazing. And where you can find me, on Instagram, I'm starting to get on TikTok, and I'm on, yeah, basically it's those two. I am on Threads, but it's like every once in a while. So yeah,
That's
you
very
can find me.
fair.
Yeah.
Well, everyone go pick up Namina's The Gilded Ones series or the Deathless series. The Gilded Ones, the Merciless Ones, and the Eternal Ones. Namina,
So
I'm
good.
obsessed with the third book. I just finished it. It was great. Thank you so much for writing it. I loved the ending. I thought you did a very great job. So that's just me geeking out because I was actually the one who like read the book first and I was like, Laura, I loved this. And then she picked it up. So I feel like we've come full circle and this is a dream moment for me to get to talk to you again and again. So thank you for coming on the pod.
Yes,
And
thank you so
everyone,
much.
you can follow us at OWWR Pod, ourpod.com for our current reading lists. And tomorrow we are back to regularly scheduled program for the year of the Dresden as we
Or
continue to
Dresden
go
Files.
to the Dresden Files. So join us tomorrow. And thanks again, Namina.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.